I do think that through acting, I have been able to see how it gives the audience an excuse to connect, to feel, and to feel comfortable enough to feel vulnerable, if that makes sense. And vulnerability is the biggest thing of it all, I guess. And it shouldn't be seen as a weakness in my mind.
Welcome to Story Power, a new bi-monthly podcast where my guests and I geek out about the stories we are passionate about in all different genres, styles, and formats. And we'll give a few recommendations to you, our listeners. Beware, possible spoilers ahead. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and I started this podcast during the COVID-19 pandemic. As I watched the reaction of my social media circle, I noticed that many people turned to stories for comfort and help in making sense of the craziness going on around them. And as all good stories do, the world got even crazier. But as Neil Gaiman says, fairy tales are more than true not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten. Since I believe that stories have the power to show us the way and give us courage to keep going, I wanted to see if that was true for my guests as well. You are listening to episode number 6. My guest today is Melissa Villanueva. I hope I said that right.
It's good.
Welcome, Melissa.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
I'm excited too. Melissa is, I'm going to say, a former student of mine because I'm not sure that, well, I guess you still have one thing left to finish up before I have to say goodbye to you as my student. So I remember that you came, the first time I met you was when you took Acting 1, I think. But tell the story of why you decided to take acting.
Right. So I guess I've always known that I wanted to perform. When I was young, I would always hang out with my little cousins and we would make these like concerts. We would invite my family into this like my room, and mind you, my room is very small, but we had a mini trampoline and that would be like the stage, and we would create performances for our family. So they would sit down and they would pretend like it was the best thing ever in the world. They would clap. And I guess that's why I love it much, because it was a way of me, to call the attention of my family and call them into my room and connect with them for a couple of minutes, because it really didn't last long, but we still have fun. Oops, sorry. So, and then growing, I used to watch Disney movies a lot. So I would memorize the lines of the films completely, because I would rewatch these things over and over and over until I had them ingrained in my head.
Oh, yeah.
And to the point where when I was in kindergarten, I wouldn't be allowed to watch movies with the other kids because I would be repeating the dialogue and annoying the other kids. They would always tell me to shut up, but I never did. This is why I kind of started falling in love with theater. Now, why I chose theater for my career and why I thought it was a good idea, I think, is I feel we live in a society right now where it is a weakness to showcase emotion and empathy and love and all these things. This is like an invisible force. I like to think of it the way it's that way, at least, that's dragging people down from being themselves and being free to display that emotion without worrying of what others will think. So I do think that through acting, I have been able to see how it gives the audience an excuse to connect, to feel, and to feel comfortable enough to feel vulnerable, if that makes sense. And vulnerability is the biggest thing of it all, I guess. And it shouldn't be seen as a weakness in my mind. I don't know. Should I keep going?
I agree with you. Wholeheartedly. Yeah, that's so, because I came to love stories through movies too. So
yes.
And then I became a big reader as well. So yeah, and that's always the thing that connected me to the movies and to the books that I read is the emotion.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
I,
so your plan is to be a musical theater artist. Is that right?
yes, the biggest dream that I have is being in Broadway,
Oh, yeah.
a show starring in a Broadway show. That
Uh-huh.
would be like the absolute best thing. And I like to think I think very big, and I can get into that later.
Okay, so we were talking about you hopefully being on Broadway, and I love that dream. I think that's a
Mm,
great dream.
thank you.
And so, do you also read books? Do you watch any other things besides movies that you love that have you've learned something
Oh
from?
yes. I guess, like I said before, I grew up with Disney and mostly my grandfather's stories. Like I grew up with a family of writers and storytellers. That's
Oh,
my grandfather especially. So he will always rely on his stories to keep a conversation going.
uh-huh.
And that's why I love it so much. No matter if they're real or made up, because he can sit you down and tell you all this story, and then he's going to tell you that it's not real, and you believe it. So he is 90 years old, and he has lived so many different lives growing up. That's why how I like to see it. He's
Yeah.
because he was born in a town that no longer exists. Now it's a bigger city and stuff, but the mine, because it's a mining town, mining city,
Oh.
they built over his hometown, so it's no longer there. He grew up with an incredible, like, his traditions. Obviously, the generations are very very different, and it's very amazing to me how he has adapted to all of this, and
Yeah.
he still finds himself and knows who he is through these stories. Yeah, and I find that very very beautiful. I guess you could say that. And yes, I have always loved books. In fact, my mom is writing her own novel, so it's
Oh,
always it's very inspiring. Yes,
I can't wait to read it.
yes, she's talking about the whole thing going on with immigration and all these things, and
Oh,
she's
yeah.
putting it into a I guess historical fiction. Is that the genre? I
Oh,
don't know.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's very very good.
Exciting.
But for I guess, yeah, I've loved books, shows, and anime. But I think what I love about shows, and the ones I always look for, are those that deal with self discovery and identity, because it's something
Yes.
I completely agree with. And I think my favorite form would be musicals. And there's something about musicals that you can't get anywhere else when trying to convey a story that, like that of self-discovery and identity.
Yeah.
So like classics like Anastasia, literally any animation from Studio Ghibli, Kiki's Delivery Service, Howl's Moving Castle, all of those.
Uh-huh.
Um, they're all amazing stories that not only have strong leading female protagonists, but they do so like such an amazing job at showcasing how important that passion, that drive and ambition are. And I guess I'm a sucker for character development, and these are pretty straightforward films, but that's exactly why I love them, because the journey and struggle it is shown so clearly. And
Yes.
there's something so attractive about a character who takes on the journey and manages to succeed. But what's most important is how they end up finding themselves and growing in the process. So, in a way, these stories are what have kept me going. They have kept me dreaming all these years, and they've kept me dreaming big, I guess, with the Broadway thing. Working on said aspirations is hard, and you need to be incredibly dedicated and persistent. That goes without saying, but what we forget a lot of the times is how hard it is to keep that flame glowing.
Oh, yeah, especially if you meet resistance or rejection.
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the hardest things of the journey is finding a way to keep that passion and love alive, especially when you pick a path that is so hard it might seem impossible. For instance, I guess what a great example we have here. The career path that I have decided to take is incredibly, unconventional and
Yes.
extremely ambitious, to say the least. So,
Yes, really.
mhm.
But I have noticed you're also an artist because I've seen your artwork on Instagram.
Oh, thank you.
Is that, and I've wondered and I've never asked, is it artwork that is going into be a graphic novel, or is it just artwork that you're doing for your own pleasure? Or
currently it's art for my own pleasure. I do wish I could partake in some big project eventually, because I like I said, I really love character development, world building, of creating your own story, and I think I really love fiction, or fantasy. So I guess I would go that route because animation is so diverse and flexible. You can do whatever it is that you want. But through acting, again, it's both ways. But yeah, that's what I do.
that is so cool. Now I know that you also hook up with friends and sing on the internet, and you did this before the COVID-19 thing.
Yes.
Because I think it was the first acting class that you took, you were telling me, or maybe you were telling Dave and me about hooking up with friends online and doing duets and that kind of thing. Tell more about that.
Right. So I guess a lot of people, ever since the COVID-19 happened, have asked, they always keep asking people, how are you doing? How are you adapting yourself to the whole thing? And what I found very interesting is how it hasn't really affected me much, because I had already, most of the things that obviously with school, you obviously have to adapt and stuff, especially when I was taking singing classes and I had to still have a recital online, which is really crazy. But doing the covers online with people, with duets on YouTube, really helped me be ready for a recital online for school, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because I already knew how to work from a distance. I knew how to contact people and how to edit my voice and piece together different voices. I guess that's the best I can explain it.
Yeah. Oh my, so you are doing, I already knew this, but I love that you're doing so many different creative things because you never know which one's going to take off and then open up a world,
Yes.
a whole different world and other opportunities for you. I just
absolutely
love that.
Yes.
I love that.
I guess that's why the uncertainty is what drives me a lot of the times. Just because art is so, the art industry, whatever it is that you do, acting, dancing, singing, acting, all these things, it's very uncertain whether you're going to get that role. And it's many of the times it's not even because it's you. They just look for something. They're looking for something specifically.
Yes.
And sometimes it's not that you're a bad actor. It's because they're not what they're looking for.
Right. Yeah, that's happened to me. I really wanted to, there's a play called The Rainmaker is the name of it. And it's an old play, very old play, but there's only one female role in it. And it's a woman who thinks that she's very plain. It takes place in like the 1920s or early 30s, maybe.
Oh, yes.
And she lives on a ranch with her father and brothers. And of course, she's the one, and her mother is dead. She takes care of the household, and they keep trying to find a husband for her.
Oh, God.
Women are supposed to be married,
Yes.
and she's getting older. She's maybe 25 or maybe even approaching 30.
And that's like old back then.
Yes. And this, and they're in a drought. I think it takes place in Texas. And this man comes along who claims to be able to make rain. He's a rainmaker. Well, of course, he's really a con man, but in the course of the play, he helps her figure out that she's worthy. She's worthy to be loved, and it doesn't. And the person that she's really in love with happens to be the sheriff, whose wife left him, and he's divorced now. Of course, he always claims that he is a widower, but everybody knows that he's really divorced. They just never say anything to him about it because they want him to retain his dignity.
Yes. So it's all about that that pride, I guess.
Yes. And so I wanted to play that part so bad because I identified with her so much.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a master's project, directing project. And the woman told me, I really wanted you to play that part, but you were so strong, you would have overpowered all the other guys, all the guys. And so she picked somebody else. And it was like, I was
It
really
is such
bummed.
a weird compliment if you think about it.
I know it was a weird compliment. Yeah. And maybe
Mhm.
she was just, saying that to make me feel better. I don't know. But,
I don't think so, but
but yeah, so I understand. Yeah, you have to, it's this subjective, the director has something in his or her mind
yes,
and they
you
pick.
need to adapt. You need to find
Right.
your niche, I guess.
So I totally understand. And that's a good thing that you understand that. Yeah.
Hmm. I guess going back to why I chose theater and going back to the whole vulnerability part of it all,
Mm-hmm.
it's that it goes both ways. As an actor, you need to be vulnerable in order to listen and learn your part.
Mm-hmm.
And then by being vulnerable, you allow the audience to be vulnerable with you, if that
Yes.
makes sense. So you give them a space where people feel safe and have a true connection, which at the end of the day is what truly makes us human, I guess. The
Yes.
pain, the anguish, the anger, the happiness of living, I guess, all in one single performance.
Yes. You're right.
I completely agree when you say that you really identify with that character because now you can see it through a much more personalized lens where I as an actor can finally let myself go when you play a different character. There is no sense or concept of self anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you can completely detach yourself. Well, I can completely detach myself from the character I'm playing, and I can freely say, I don't care how I am perceived by others, which is a truly
I
amazing feeling. Yes.
Yeah. In other words, well, I don't know how you do it because everyone has their own method of acting, if you want to call it that,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you don't want to call it method, but because that always brings up this specific
New.
type of
Yes.
acting. But they have their own way of approaching a character. And what I discovered was it didn't matter what character I was playing, there was always some little part of me that was like
You
that
connect with it.
character. Or, yes, or that I could identify with
Yes.
the character. So, and then kind of what you said, I had to let the rest of who I was go away
Exactly.
while I
Yes.
was on stage.
And to me, that is so, it's such a freeing feeling because I personally have struggled in the past with a lot of that little voice in my head saying, like, oh, what will they think of me? Like, how will they perceive me? And that's why I love acting so much because I can
Mhm.
completely get rid of that. And technically, it's still a flaw because I guess I'm hiding behind this other character. But in that moment, I feel like I can still convey some part of myself without having to worry how they will view me.
Yes. That's a really big lesson
Mm-hmm.
because I've had to learn that not to let what other people think affect me. Yeah.
And all you have to do is focus on conveying and representing the character, their
Mhm.
personality, and their story. So what they have
Right.
to say to, and that's just to the best of my abilities. And yeah, it's very relieving thinking, well, I don't have to worry if they will accept me or if they'll love me. Like once you detach yourself from that sense of self, like I said, and stop
Mhm.
fighting the urge to be someone or fit this role, everything is no more than a trivial, irrational fear.
Mhm. And so, do you have a specific, you talked about the Disney stories, but do you have other kinds of stories that you really like? And let me give you an example. We moved a lot
Mm,
when I was growing up. And so I connect with stories where characters are sort of plopped down into this unusual situation and they have to learn to navigate it, and it's
yes.
because I moved so often and
Mm-hmm.
I had to do that. So do you have anything sort of like that, story, a type of story that you relate to because of something like that?
Right. I feel I'm going to connect this back to musical theater. And I think one of my favorite musicals and the one that I would love to play as is Anastasia. Just because so for example, this was the first musical I saw live. And the moment I came out of that theater, I was completely reassured that theater was what I wanted to do in my life. And in the animated film, in the musical, Anastasia has no memories of her life growing up. She has absolutely no clue who she is. And that's something I struggled a lot before as well, finding that identity. And that's why I like these stories so much, because she had no memory. Obviously, she had, it's amnesia. And she has absolutely no clue who she is. And yet she takes on the challenge to try and find this grandmother of hers, even though she doesn't know yet. And she goes with just the belief and hope that she will somehow make it. And it is that drive she has that gets her where she wants to be in the end. It is such a difficult thing to put into words. That love for theater you can see on a passionate actor. And that's what makes performing so magical for me. And that's why I want to play that role so bad, because she comes from nothing. She's for one, she's very poor. She was raised by nurses and she's always been terrified of them. And yet she has no memories of who she was. And she's shaping herself to this new world that she's in. And then she meets these two other guys that tell her that she's got what it takes to, try and see if she can be the Princess Anastasia. And she imagine someone coming and telling you got what it takes. I mean, you can lie about it. We'll make it work. And you don't know, you don't believe in yourself, but somehow you still need to push through and believe that you can.
It sounds to me like I have not seen that version that you're talking about. But there's this really wonderful non-musical version with Ingrid Bergman in it playing Anastasia. And she's looking for family. That's what her character is looking for. She's looking for family. And it's like she has something inside of her, a drive inside of her to find the family. I think at some point she is convinced that she's Anastasia. And so,
but having that trust, I guess that's the thing. Trusting in that drive or that gut feeling.
Yes, right. And I can see that in you. I can see that that you have this drive to succeed, this drive to make your dreams come true. I can see that in you. After all the classes that I have worked with you, plays and such, I can see that in you. So I understand why that kind of story would really speak to you.
Yes. In fact, this semester that just went by, for my recital, I sang In My Dreams from that musical, Anastasia. And it's also from the animated movie, but I don't know what it is. I always try to sing songs that really resonate with me. If not, I really don't. And that's what I like about my singing coach, because she is very open to what I bring up and tell her, this is what I want to sing. And she works with me until I can make it. And with this song, I teared up because it's such an emotional thing. And it's something that I feel so close to me. I'm trying to find who I am, and I'm trying to get to that place, even though I don't know how certain it is that I'll make it, but I like believing in it.
Oh yeah. Well, so I wanted to say that remember when you did your honors, theater honors?
Antigone. Yes.
Antigone. I cried when you did that.
Oh.
When you performed it for the colloquy.
Yes.
And Dave and I were both so emotional because you did such a great job of that.
Oh, thank you.
And other people said that they cried as well.
Oh, yeah. There's my mom brought in his coworker, ex-coworker. They used to work in the same department, but not anymore. But she brought him with her, and he cried. He had to leave, and he sent him a message afterwards telling me that I did a very good job, but he didn't want me to see him cry. So he had to leave before. Yeah. And Antigone is another great example. She is incredibly young, and she has nothing assuring her that what she's doing will get her anywhere or it's the right thing to do. But she stands for what she believes in, and with a burning passion that's so strong that not even death will stop her from doing what she knows is right to her.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the two Shakespeare play roles that you had were sort of the same. Isabella in Measure for Measure.
They're very similar. Yes.
Yes, and Viola, is that her name?
Viola, yes.
In but what's
Twelfth Night?
Oh, Cesario. Twelfth Night, yeah. Both of those women are the same. Is similar because it's in a time when women didn't really have very many rights, but Viola says, "Oh, okay, I've lost everything. I've been in this shipwreck. I'm going to pretend that I'm a guy so that I can survive."
And they find a way to play that game and succeed, which is so amazing to me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, is there a story or two that you would love to recommend to our listeners? Do you have something that you would like to recommend?
Yes, I have two. They're very, I guess it's not a story, but I have some recommendations that I've written down. Okay. So the first one is Midnight Gospel, which is an adult animated series on Netflix. I just finished watching and I have not been able to stop talking about it ever since I did, because it's so good. This is a collection of podcast segments with comedian, what's his name? Duncan Trussell, I believe, and several other guests of different backgrounds, worldviews and beliefs, where they explore the existential topics on life and death. And basically everything that deals with how the human mind works and where we stand in the world we live in. It's really inspirational. And I think what I love the most about this series is how they managed to combine the voiceovers of the podcast with the animated storyline, like so seamlessly.
Oh, wow. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's adult cartoon. So while the podcast is going on in the background, the main character, he is... You can see it's a visual, but it's still connected to the podcast, if that makes any sense, which is really cool. And I think it's brilliant. And it's something I had never seen done before. So I really love it. If for those who love to ask themselves, like, why am I here? Or if you like deep talks and cartoons, I guess this is the show for you.
Yeah. That's great.
And then the other one, it's a music album. And let me explain why I think this is a story. So it's called Everywhere at the End of Time by The Caretaker. This is a project, and it's seriously one of the most mind-blowing and original albums I've discovered in a really long time. So this music, or I guess you could call ambient music, it's an album that is meant to be a representation of memory loss due to early onsets of dementia.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So really creative things. I'm going to have to check those out.
The creator of it's an insane masterpiece. And it divides the album in 6 stages. So every stage becomes more and more detached with faint and distorted measures of what once was a clear and beautiful song. And those are like the representation of memories.
Wow.
Yes. And this goes on until the caretaker succumbs to total memory loss and confusion, and which is such a powerful and genius form of storytelling, in my opinion. The fact that they're able to tell these stories, but with just this through music, but it's so different. And
I was going to say that music does connect us with our emotions so readily.
Mm-hmm. And you can feel it. While I was listening to this, I had to stop because there's several hours. First of all, the album is super long. But I had to stop myself because it comes to a point where it's very depressing. The music is very scary, and it really puts you in the mind of a person with dementia. You're losing your dreams, and you're experiencing this, and the fact that you don't even realize it is the scariest part of it all, I think. And the complete album can be found on YouTube, and if you check the description of the video, every stage comes with a smaller description of what the stage entails. the stages of dementia,
Oh
basically.
my gosh, Melissa, that sounds fantastic. How did you find it?
I was watching, I think, videos on people that put their art in galleries and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And there was this guy breaking down this gallery. And he mentions for a split second this album and how there's this other, they put this music in the background
Mm-hmm.
in this gallery. I forget the name of the artist, but he sculpts. So these sculptures are in this gallery while this music is playing in the background, which is so it's so good. It's really really great.
Oh,
So
wow. Well, even just visual art can has an energy. I believe it has an
mhm.
energy.
Yes.
And in 1996, my husband and I took a trip around the world. And one of the places that we went,
Oh, that's
well,
amazing.
one of the places we went was to Paris, and we went to Notre Dame.
Oh,
And when you go to you can't go inside anymore because of the fire.
fire. Yes.
But the very first thing is you get your brochure, and then they have this like prescribed path for tourists. Well, on the day we were there, the choir was practicing up in the loft. Up
Oh
in the
my
choir
God, that is amazing.
and there were a bunch of people in there, but it was like they were quiet because the choir was practicing. And I
Hmm.
looked to my right, and there's this full size statue of sculpture of Joan of Arc, and I just started bawling. I have no idea why.
You feel it, and I
Yes,
guarantee you listening to that background of
the
the choir.
music, right?
Hmm.
So poor Barry, my husband Barry, he says, "Are you okay?" And I couldn't even answer him. And he said, "Okay, here. There's this little place over here where you can sit and pray." So he took me
Oh,
to this little cordoned off area where there were chairs and there were people praying, and there was another
right.
statue of Mary, the mother of Jesus, holding Jesus.
And you
Um,
started crying even.
and I just was, I don't know how long I cried until I kind of calmed down, and then we could go through the rest of Notre Dame. But
Hmm.
it was such a beautiful experience. And then
Oh, I can't even imagine.
when
Yeah.
we were in Amsterdam, we went to the Vincent van Gogh Museum,
Mm,
and on the ground floor were paintings by other artists, not Van
not
Gogh.
Van Gogh. Hmm.
His stuff was on the second floor. And I come around the corner, and there's this little tiny, it's not a very large painting. And it's like a bedroom with the curtains open and the sun coming in, and there was a chair, and, nothing really remarkable. And I turned around, I looked at it, and again, it was like energy shot off the painting. And I went,
Mm,
oh, what? And
it's an overwhelming feeling. Yeah, yeah,
yes. And I started to cry, and I said, okay, who painted this painting? It was by Picasso.
yeah. Hmm.
And I went, oh, well, no wonder I feel this energy. And of course, when we went upstairs and saw the Van Gogh, there
Hmm.
were other paintings of his that a lot of them were of, people working in wheat fields and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I was overwhelmed with
Yes.
none of his super famous paintings, like Starry Night wasn't there, but it was this very overwhelmingly emotional. I think it was emotional for both of us because my
Hmm.
husband is a visual artist.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I think you've mentioned it before that he's a graphic artist.
well, he's also a potter, but we have several of his paintings
Yes.
around our house too. So we have his pottery, we have his paintings and drawings.
I was listening to this. It was a video. I was watching this video on. I can't remember the name of this artist. It Beksinski. I think that's. I'm pronouncing it really bad, but they call him. It's a Polish horror painter, and
Oh,
he does such an amazing job at just conveying like the horrors that he sees around him.
uh-huh.
Maybe I can link you some video sometime, but they call him the nightmare artist because it's so, you look at his paintings and it's scary, but he does it in
Mm-hmm.
such a way that I don't think I feel like a lot of people who do like horror films these days,
Mhm.
me to like see him and see his work, because I feel like these days, I don't know, I love horror films, but I feel like they're not doing it right anymore, which is kind of sad.
I haven't seen A Quiet Place, or what was the one? Get
Bird
Out.
Box. Oh, Get Out. I have not seen Get Out. I've seen A Quiet Place. It's all right. I don't know. Um,
I am not a horror fan though, so I don't
mhm.
watch them because in when I was growing up in the 70s, they were like these slasher movies.
Oh, yes, the gore ones.
Lots of blood and gore. And I just went, okay, I'm sorry. I'm a highly sensitive person. I just couldn't deal with those.
You couldn't do it. Yep.
No. And
Hmm.
I mean, my brother and I, when we lived in Goldendale, it was one of the small towns that actually had a movie theater. Most of the small towns didn't have a movie theater. So
Hmm.
on Saturday afternoons, sometimes we would go to the movie. Well, we went to see these. They're British. Hammer is the movie company, and they had all
Mm.
these like Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee were in a lot of the movies, and it was a Dracula one. And I remember we went to see one of the Dracula ones, and I think Peter Cushing, or excuse me, Christopher Lee was playing Dracula. Well, we went home that night. I had horrible nightmares. And I've seen that movie since, and it's like, why was I so scared of that movie? Because, now they're kind of laughable, a little bit
Oh,
laughable.
yes. I remember my mom, she always tells the story. My mom and my dad went to watch The Blair Witch Project when it first came out. I back then, and I think I can't remember what year it aired, but I remember them telling me that it was so scary because it's something that they had never seen like before. The way the effects and everything,
Yes.
people were actually, and the fact that it was showcased as like a documentary. Oh
Right.
my god, people could not. And you see it now; it's scary, but I don't. To me, it's not that scary. But
Yeah.
again, subjective.
Yes, right. Yeah. Because you watch those Hammer films now and they're not scary. At
Yes,
least I don't think they are.
they're
And
laughable if you're watching it with friends. Oh my god, it's so laughable
yes,
sometimes.
yes,
Yes.
yes, right. Yeah. Yeah. No, we didn't go see the Blair Witch Project, but
Hmm.
I'm a little older than your mom. So Barry and I were like, oh, okay, that's for teenagers. We're not going to go
Yes,
see
the films that really scare me. I think I saw Midsummer. It's also called, and it's such a good one. There's also I really like foreign films as well.
that.
There's one. It's translated to Good Night, Mommy, but it has another name. But these are like very very scary films that I really like. And it's not specifically for gore, although some do have gore, but it's not the central part of it. It's more like
Hmm.
psychological,
Hmm.
and that's what. Oh, I really
Yes.
like it. I don't know. A lot of people are like, "Well, why do you torture yourself?" It's because it's enjoyable in a way. The journey is enjoyable. When I'm alone at night, that's a whole other story. But
Right. Well, and that's part of why I liked Alfred Hitchcock or I like his work so much because it's a lot of times it's more psychological. It's suspense. It's not horror.
yes, hmm
Um, speaking of foreign films, I was wondering if you had ever watched any Bollywood movies because they have really
mm.
interesting mix of story and music. It's different than American musicals. So you might.
I've seen kind of compilations of it, but
Mhm.
it's mostly people making fun of them. I don't. I have never seen one, and I feel like I should because of that reason specifically.
Well, one that I love is Bride and Prejudice. And it's because I love Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen.
Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and it's set in modern times and in Mr. Darcy is American. He's not British. And it's just really interesting because it's not technically a musical, I don't
Mm.
think, but they do a lot of singing and dancing. I'm not sure they would classify it as a musical, but it's so interesting.
What would be classified for them a musical? Because I don't know.
Maybe it is classified as a musical, but I have heard, and I've only seen a couple of other Bollywood movies. They always have some musical segment. It might not actually even be related to the story. I mean, the characters go someplace and they witness this musical thing
out of nowhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and they have a segment like that in Bride and Prejudice where the two sisters go off with these rich guys. Mr. Darcy's one of them, just for like a couple of days to Goa. I'd never been to Goa. We did go to India, but we were in the Delhi area, and Goa's on the coast someplace. And they're at this like nightclubby kind of place, but it's out on the beach sort of. And they have this woman doing a concert. And that's how they did it in that movie. But I heard, and I've seen it, that they always have kind of a musical segment in it.
That's very interesting.
I can't remember the name of the other movie, but it has an American actress in it in the Bollywood movie. So they did the same thing. They had this musical segment, and it wasn't a musical. That one was not a musical. Yeah,
but they had to have that musical segment.
And
that's so interesting. I don't.
It is interesting. I've never seen one that is a like drama. So I don't know if they
for Bollywood.
Yeah, from Bollywood. So I don't know if they put musical segments in something that's a drama. But I've only seen 2 or 3 or 4 of them, and they're so interesting.
Yeah, right. It's a cultural shock. I feel like that's why. I guess going back to the whole why I like art so much, because you put some or theater, I guess musical theater. It's because it combines dance and acting and singing and all in one thing, like Bollywood. Yeah. But I don't know.
Right? Yeah. Well, I am so happy that we got to talk.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, I'm happy that you agreed to do it. I have other students that I want to talk to too, because we've had some really interesting conversations over all the classes that we've taken.
Oh yes. What is it? Dramatic structure. Oh,
that was a fun class.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I love teaching it. So I'm teaching it again in the fall. I hope I get some students.
Oh, that is very nice.
Yeah. Okay, well, you take care, and thank you for being my guest.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for inviting me again.
I hope you enjoyed the show. If you liked what you heard, please share it with a friend and give us a review on your favorite podcast app. It will help people find us. You'll find the show notes for this episode at my website, Sage Woman Chronicles, at sagewoman.life. You can leave a comment there. And remember, as Philip Pullman said, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. Until next time, this is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. Thanks for listening.